morning and welcome to BlackUSA.News. This is the Donnie Glover Show. I'd like to welcome you to the show. My name is Donnie Glover. Tonight, folks, we're going to talk about some politics. We're going to talk with some newsmakers and some people who make things happen. I promise you an hour of power. Stay tuned. Put your seatbelt on. Let me just say, I've been covering Maryland politics since '98. And it is always refreshing to be in the company of the next generation of leaders. I'm 56, and I know that it is a part of my duty to pass the ball and make sure we put the light on some of the stars in the next generation. And one of those stars, without a shadow of a doubt, is Mr. Richard DeShay Elliott.
Hey, thank you for having me, Donnie. I appreciate a good Baltimore intro. It is echoing, so the people at the home aren't hearing the echo.
Okay, well, I'll mute my mic in between. How have you been? Tell us who you are.
So I'm Richard DeShay Elliott, candidate for House of Delegate in the 24th Legislative District. Been out here hitting doors today, and an esteemed guest who gets to speak on Donnie Glover's show. I think that today we're going to have a very, very interesting segment. I hope my phone doesn't die because it just hit 1%, but I hope that I can stay on.
You say you only got 1%?
Yeah, that's what happens when you're out hitting doors.
Well, okay. Well, let's get straight to the jugular. Tell us about the breaking news today.
Sure. So today what came out was a dossier, about 42 pages, from the Westmore campaign accusing the John King campaign of releasing information, of not putting the information with the proper financial disclosures, of the information being incorrect. The Moore campaign is trying to sic the state prosecutor and the campaign finance division on the King campaign. Meanwhile, the King campaign is denying any involvement. And however, they do say that, quote, the information included in said dossier is important for review, has grand importance, and it's questions that Westmore is going to have to answer. I will state right here that I am a supporter of the Peter Franchot, Monique Anderson Walker ticket, so that everybody knows my personal leanings, but I did not distribute this memo. I had nothing to do with writing it. I had nothing to do with researching it. And it's just a very bizarre circumstance on the whole. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
For those who may not know, John King is one of 5 candidates coming out of Montgomery County and running for governor.
Yep. There's currently 10 candidates for governor. The ones from Montgomery are John King, Tom Perez, Doug Gansler, Peter Franchot, and John Barron. Shwani Jane is also from Montgomery. So 6 candidates from Montgomery. You have in this race, you have one of the most interesting mixes of candidates. You have multiple federal candidates with Tom Perez and John King with federal cabinet level experience. You have multiple homegrown people that have their own strong bases with Doug Gansler, Peter Franchot, and Rashawn Baker. You have multiple big money individuals, John Barron and Michael Rosenbaum, who has since dropped out. You have Laura Newman, who's the only woman running. And then at the same time, you have a backdrop of a 2-person AG race and a 2-person comptroller race, both of which feature an African-American man from Prince George's versus a white woman from the Baltimore metropolitan area. And you have congressional and legislative redistricting. So you have perhaps the most convoluted explanation for even what you'll be voting on, let alone who's going to be up, what they're running on, and what district you're in. It's made a very, very interesting cycle where a lot of people are just interested to know what's even going on right now, let alone what might be happening next week.
Now, you touched on a broader issue, which is the redistricting, which impacts the filing deadline.
Yes.
Are you getting the scuttlebutt about that not being the date, next Friday, the 15th?
Yes. I personally believe that the primary is going to be delayed even further, given that I've heard from multiple Board of Election individuals that they don't have the time they need to properly make the ballots. We also now, rather than printing them in state, we now print them in Wisconsin and then ship them here. That was a major issue in the Baltimore mayoral race. I think that the filing deadline may be extended to as late as the end of April. And I expect that this election is going to be held in late July or possibly early August, given a wide variety of factors. And don't forget that next week, Joseph Getty, the chief judge, his last 2 days will be presiding over a judicial review of the new state map. So while the magistrate has requested a denial of the 4 different appeals, the Court of Appeals is still going to look into them. And this could have impact not just in this cycle, but in the future. We already have seen congressional maps are now under state state constitutional purview just from the first ruling. From this one, anything could happen. And I personally am expecting Joseph Getty, if he can, to try and implement the Hogan Commission maps, which curiously you cannot even go into anymore to look at where your address is relative to your district. So a lot of things can happen. Regarding the governor's race further, there are a large number of local candidates, so delegates and senators that support Mr. Westmore. There are fewer, but still a substantial number that support Mr. Francho. If they implement the fiat maps, as I call them, the Hogan Commission maps, a lot of Westmore supporters could end up facing each other in the primary. You are an expert in what happened in 2002. I don't even got to tell you about it, with C4 and the city maps being drawn all into the county, where a whole bunch of people had to challenge their neighbor, their friend, blah, blah, blah. If that happens in this cycle, you would have a power schism, not just among, generational and racial lines, but even among who individuals are supporting for governor, comptroller, and AG. It's made for the most complicated governor cycle. We haven't even talked about the candidates yet.
You mentioned 02. C4 got a district, and I live in that old district, the 44th, mostly West Baltimore. Because he supported Ehrlich, he was punished by the Democratic machine, and they stretched this 44th district all the way to the easternmost parts of Baltimore City. Ridiculous for and ended up very. So here's the question: Linda Stone came out in the league, and
I need the charger. Hey, Doni, can you hear me?
Still with you?
Yeah, I'm still with you, but it cut out. The last question you asked cut out. The last question cut out.
Linda came was stated, hey, when this thing goes, my fault. She's with the Board of Elections. She has control. She's everyone else. And wanting to, you have who I and I where would
bad, but I got your question regarding Linda Lamone.
Okay.
Linda Lamone has been the state Board of Elections person since the O'Malley administration. She's a person who's responsible, in my opinion, for returning citizens being unaware that they have their voting rights returned. Part of the reason I'm supporting Peter Francho for governor is he wants to replace Linda Lamone. And in this election cycle, with all the different confusions, with the delays, I think it is even more important than ever before to investigate Linda Lamone, to really see what role she has had in that agency, particularly for after she's gone.
And what I like Peter Show, the comptroller for
I have a charger now, but now the questions are cutting out. I had better service when I was on the side of the road. All right, so you're asking why I'm supporting him. So I'm supporting Francho for a wide variety of reasons. One of them is that he has just displayed a lot of expertise in who to pick for. He has the best for a wide variety of things, whether it be sign players, field operators, whoever. The campaign has been going really good on issues, whether it be the gas tax, whether it be the state stimulus, on a lot of small issues. Peter Francho has continuously been a leader, especially relative to the legislature. And then most important for me as a person that wants to be a delegate, I believe that Speaker Jones has a considerable amount of sway in the House of Delegates. I would like to have a governor who I can partner with, whether it's to make the speaker better or whether it's to help protect my interest against the speaker. So that's why I'm supporting Comptroller Francho, Monique Anderson Walker, his lieutenant governor choice, outstanding. Monique Anderson Walker was great on the Prince George's County Council, and that really was what solidified my choice for the ticket. Absolutely.
how long.
So I've known Comptroller Francho since about 2017, I believe. When I was an undergraduate out at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the comptroller has a wide amount of support in Baltimore County through people in his camp. I met a good number of them. I eventually sat down with Peter. We talked about some of the stuff that we've agreed on. And ever since then, if I've had a, whether it be a constituent service issue or there's a systemic issue I want to talk about, his office has been a very, very big help. So in spite of the fact that he is the oldest candidate, he's an old white boy, I am great with Peter Francho, and I think that when he's governor, he'll be a great governor, and I'll have a good amount of influence in administration, which I will use gladly to assist Baltimore City as well as Prince George's County.
Can you tell me about his?
Yeah. Okay. So about his agenda. So as you might have said, as other people know, I'm known as a progressive Democrat. For a lot of parts of his agenda are things that I plan to introduce, but with Maryland's gubernatorial power, for a lot of things, he can directly fund them. So for some of the things in the agenda that I'm particularly excited about is universal broadband, creating 100,000 jobs in transit and infrastructure, which would be astounding for fixing the economic situation in the state, creating a statewide return of citizens entity like there was in DC, or excuse me, like there is in DC. Outside of those, particularly on government operations, on hiring people, on replacing administrators that have been problems like Linda Lamone. He's been outspoken on that. So I have a physical copy of his Black Agenda at home. I think that his Black Agenda is he's the only candidate who proposed the quote unquote Black Agenda. And the agenda contains elements from broadband, business, government administration, education, seniors, etc.
Can you talk to me about public education? Prince George's County and Baltimore City are in a perpetual fight for the bottom.
We all know about the blueprint Kerwin. Kerwin is going to, I think, have an astounding impact on improving educational outcomes across the state. What's important is making sure that the people that are at the bottom are getting investments that help move them closer to the top. So for on education, some of the things I want to do particularly is new school construction and old school maintenance. In Baltimore City, there's a lot of schools that have been shut down for spurious reasons. A lot of those could be either turned back into schools, turned into community classrooms where adults can continue education, younger people can get daycare, etc. Just turn them into city infrastructure. I want to make sure that every school has mental health educators, paraprofessionals. I was a paraprofessional out in Edmondson Village, and I was able to teach 5 and 6 and 7 children at once. Outside of those, we have to ensure that we reduce our reliance on standardized tests, whether it be what is it called, the MSA, that's for like third graders, or whether it be the GRE, that's for when you're trying to apply to grad school. Standardized tests have always been applied to keep Black folks, brown folks, poor people out of education. Peter Franchot wants to reduce their impact, or wants to reduce their utilization. I agree with that fully.
Now, see, I thought you were going to surprise me and say that Peter Franchot is going to get us a Black Secretary of Education. The state school, school superintendent.
That's something I've heard them hint towards, but I've never heard that as a promise. However, if and when that is offered for me to try and help select the person, I think that Shayla Adams Stafford of Prince George's County would be an astounding option for that.
Well, this is why I say, and not to preach to the choir.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1973, the state of Maryland introduced this Maryland State Lottery.
Mm-hmm.
And it promised money for education. I was 8 years old, but I remember it like yesterday. They promised us money for education. Do you know how much money has come through that Maryland State Lottery since then?
By now, possibly $1 billion, if not more.
Over $15 billion. Here in Baltimore City, we have a brand new football stadium, a brand new baseball stadium, but we have classrooms. But we have classrooms with icicles in the winter, and in the warmer months, they're too hot, they're unbearable. And so I want to caution you about the football that politicians use education as. Politicians use education as that buzzword to get elected, but at the end of the day, it's almost like a cash cow. At the end of the day, we're producing an inferior product.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always
an outdated product now, because now so many people have said that for what they're learning in the classroom, they feel is for a warehouse model.
So I'm looking for someone to pay attention specifically to Baltimore and Prince George's County. I think in a 30% Black state, it's unacceptable for these two majority Black school jurisdictions to be in a perpetual race for the bottom. Something is fundamentally wrong, and you can't be my governor if you don't address it.
For a few more things that are, I'm not sure that you call these Black agenda or just general points. Franchot is the only candidate for governor calling for Baltimore City to have a fully elected school board, calling for Prince George's to have a fully elected school board, calling for Somerset County to have a fully elected school board. That does not rectify the issue, but I'm with you. We have been getting lots of money, and that money has not resulted in outcomes that have improved. That has resulted in more money for administrators, more money in teaching to the test, more money in security. We need more money for teachers. We need more money going into programs that have actually worked, and not just money that's been unfortunately soaked into an administrative program that incentivizes children to fail, in my opinion.
You know what I want, Richard? I want accountability. Because do you have children, Richard?
I do not, but I now have a little niece and a nephew. That's the niece is 4 months, the nephew's 2.
If your nephew came to you and said, Uncle Rich, I need $20. 9 o'clock in the morning, you peel him off for 20. Your same little nephew comes back at you at 12 noon and asks you for another 20. What are you going to say, Uncle Richard?
Where'd the first 20 go? Did you spend it to get another 20 in the future?
Richard, Baltimore City Public Schools, we need more money. We need more money. We need more money. We need more money. What I never hear is accountability. I don't hear it from anybody. I don't hear anyone. I could name names. I don't hear accountability. I hear everybody say, it's not my fault. We need more money. We need more money. I'm a product of Baltimore City Public Schools. I think I did okay. I went on to college, grad school, so on and so forth. You know, I run a business. The difference is, in part, the teachers. In my day, we had a lot of black teachers who loved us.
Okay, I'm going to get to that as well. So as much as we need investment in education, we also need to make sure that locals that have investment in the people around them, that have investment in the area, go in education. Maryland has astounding talent among our black population. I'll say it off bucks. We have more talented black folks than white folks. However, there are not the same opportunities to get black folks into healthcare, to get black folks into mental health care, into education. So Delegate Pena Melnick, who's about to be the chair of healthcare or the health committee next year, I'm gonna work with her on that extensively because we have to get pay supplements, student debt removal, etc., so that when people here enter PGCPS or enter Baltimore City Public Schools, they get a hometown hero bonus.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
We have that kind of a program already for police, but I've never heard of it. We have it for police, we have it for firefighters, and we have it for administrators in government.
Well, see, but that's what I'm kind of sharing with you, is that politics is full of crap when it comes to education. If education becomes a political football that people toss around to act like they really care about our young people. This is what I do know. We're failing our young people. In Baltimore, we're producing an inferior product. And no Fortune 500 company wants to come to a city with an illiterate population.
As I said way back when they were trying to the Amazon giveaway, the best thing we can do to get people to want to come here, and it's even more the case now with COVID, good internet quality, high quality schools, good public transit, and just good quality of life. And unfortunately, because of conflict between wide variety of stakeholders and all kinds of other things, we have not really invested in. When O'Malley started as governor, you know, Maryland had supposed to be #1 education in the school, and now we're what, 13th, 14th? I would dare to say also a widening gap between the white schools and the black schools.
You know, you mentioned new school. Let me tell you, Richard, they closed the schools in Sandtown. That's what they did to Sandtown. Right here where Freddie Gray is, they closed schools. And our elected officials said, well, we don't have the population. But these are the same neighborhoods where people are getting killed. Could there be a correlation, like maybe if you have more recreation centers in your neighborhood, maybe that would take people's mind away from crime, selling dope? But this is what our elected officials tell us. I'm perplexed.
Right now, they're about to spend, what, about $1 million buying Lake Clifton High School for Morgan State. It's going to have a cost every year for Morgan State of, what, $750,000 just in keeping the land even. All these different schools, even if it was just for a room or just a couple places, those are jobs. That's infrastructure. That's location where it's relevant for people that are in the most need. They have been much more interested in shutting down schools, consolidating schools, something they're not trying to do in Prince George's. Model that only leads to worse outcomes, higher costs, more of a crowded classroom.
So it really makes me wonder how well we are. That's a part of the state constitution. The mandate is to provide an adequate education for our young people. I'm concerned, Richard, when you put middle school boys in the same building with elementary school girls. It's just not appropriate.
Yeah, the consolidation was never asked for. When I went to elementary school, K through 6, middle school 7th, 8th, and then high school 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Went to college prep classes, and then 5 years undergrad and grad school. Now it would be elementaries K through 5, and then you could potentially have a middle school that goes 6th to 9th or 6th to 8th, and then a high school. Very, very odd model. Requires more schools unnecessarily without reducing the class sizes. It makes people have to go to make people go to school, people further away from them. Schools at their best amplify community love. That goal, there's automatically something wrong, in my opinion. That's as a grandson of a teacher and as a former teacher myself, as a person trained in education. In Baltimore City, I do see more momentum moving to that with community classrooms, with schools that have like washing machines and dryers and those kind of things. We need to take that on a statewide model. And hey, I'm not even going to tell you what Peter wants to do and what Peter doesn't want to do. But Peter's going to have to deal with me telling him what we need to do. And you know what I'm going to do when he's governor, regardless of who the next governor is.
What's your stance on MBE, Minority Business Enterprise?
Us to get our MBE percentage guaranteed, get rid of the waivers. And for the MBE, it needs to be people located in Maryland, people hiring Marylanders, people paying preferably higher wages, producing higher quality products, rather than simply that people pinpoint, I did a $10 million project in the past, and I have a black person on my 10-person board, and the other 9 are white boys from West Virginia. Give us the contract. So I think that Sheila Dixon and you will be two of my best influences in administration regarding MBE and procurement.
I gotta ask you this. You know, boy, you throw around some mean curveballs, and I think I lost my track. Education, it'll have to come back to it. MBE. He threw Sheila Dixon in there. What would you ask Sheila about in terms of MBE?
So Sheila right now has a position with a city, I'm sure with a city agency, but she's involved in procurement and has worked with the city government for a long time. Between you and her for Baltimore area businesses, I think that you two would be the best resources in building a permanent statewide green book, rather than a green book of businesses that are safe for black folks, a green book in businesses that produce green for black folks.
Well, I got to share with you May 6th. On May 6th, Wayne Frazier will be hosting the 19th annual Maryland Washington Minority Companies Association breakfast out at Martin's West. And it is the event. I'm sure Comptroller Francho is I think he's the keynote speaker. May the 6th, Friday, out at Martin's West, the 19th annual Maryland Washington Minority Companies Association breakfast. You don't want to miss it. Matter of fact, it's probably sold out. But I got my question for you. Edmondson, you were at Edmondson. Did you know that they reduced the number of trades that were offered at the school recently?
When I was at Edmondson Village, I was teaching in like an elementary school. At first, I was at Lyndhurst, and then they put me at, I forget the name of it, but it's like about 2 blocks away from the Edmondson Village Shopping Center. I was there teaching under Ryan Turner for the Coben Foundation program. But on the topic you're talking about, it's the same thing happened in Prince George's. There's some schools where they used to offer cosmetology services. Now they've moved into different schools without there being any warning. They tried the same thing when I was in high school. Trade schools are essential for creating black jobs now, for people that can be able to buy homes before they turn 30, when they graduate from high school at 18. And I'm going to partner with the next governor, the next comptroller, the next AG to expand trade programs so that hopefully every single municipality in Prince George's County, all 27 of them, ends up with some form of a trade school.
Tell me about substance abuse in Prince George. Years ago, Love Boat was a thing, then Dippers took over. How are we dealing with substance abuse, the pandemic, and drug addiction?
Sure. So I'll speak on the positives. Delegate Lorg Charkoudian of Montgomery County was recently able to pass a bill through the State House that will allow money to be expended on mobile crisis units. I've been working with municipal leaders in Laurel, Hyattsville, North Brentwood, Greenbelt, a few other towns. We are soon going to be able to get money from the county, I believe, that we can apply for mobile crisis units. And mobile crisis units, as has been shown in Denver, are outside of safe streets, are the most effective police brutality reduction method I have ever seen. I am fully committed to mobile crisis units and violence interrupter programs, not just in the most violence impacted areas, but throughout the state. They work and they create jobs for returning citizens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I told you I wanted you to meet some people. So this gentleman here, do you know Edsel Brown, Richard?
Please tell me about yourself.
Well, Edsel, he's a lawyer for one. He's also the new, are you the president?
Chair
of the Southern Maryland Chamber of Commerce, Black Chamber?
Minority Chamber.
Minority Chamber of Commerce. Edsel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Nice
Edsel,
to be introduced to Edsel.
Pleasure meeting you virtually. On the ride.
Edsel, you had a forum down there. What happened? Tell us about it. What happened?
I thought it was a excellent program, both in terms of having most of the candidates there to present their positions on various issues. And also it was a good exercise in collaboration, because the Maryland Black Chamber of Commerce was the primary presenter of the program, but had four or five other organizations that collaborated. So make sure that we had all points in Maryland covered: Western Maryland, Baltimore area, Montgomery and Prince George's, as well as Southern Maryland. So it was good all the way around. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did all of the candidates show up?
No, we had 9 candidates. Most of them. We only had 1 Republican candidate and 8 Democrats.
Okay.
Who were the no-show Democrats, if I may ask?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I can tell you who was there. Rashan Burker, John Barron, Peter Francho, Doug Gansler, Antoine Jane, John King, Wes Moore, and Tom Perez. And the only Republican there was Robin Fickler, who was a show in and of himself.
Well, folks, we've just been joined by Mark Spencer. He's been my guru for the past 15, 20 years on Prince George's County. Mark Spencer, how are you, sir?
Well, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Well, it's good to be with you. I was thinking about Don's call earlier, and in terms of Black political empowerment, not just in Prince George's County, but across this state. We're living in an unprecedented time. And so I think, from my perspective, that's a very positive thing. We'll see going into the future what it really means for, average folk and their prospects for the future.
About Bowie area?
Yeah.
I went to elementary school with your daughter.
Oh, okay. Well, Richard, I recognize you. You did go. I'll have to call my wife and go, how's your mom? Excellent. Yeah, Richard, well, I was in elementary school with my daughter Carmen. Yeah. Well, good to see you, Richard. Wow, you're making me feel old.
So, Mark, do you know
hold on. I got to call my wife.
Mark, Edsel, do you know Mark Spencer?
No, I don't know him.
He's no stranger to Maryland politics. Mark Spencer, you're a lawyer. Edsel Brown's a lawyer too. He's down at the Southern Maryland Minority Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, outstanding. Okay.
Pleasure meeting you as well, Mark, virtually.
I'm surprised we haven't met him in. Look at who is on the panel. Richard Elliott.
Oh, hey,
Put your hand on so you can see.
Oh, how are you?
Nice to see you, ma'am. I'm great.
So it is a very small world.
Oh, yeah, it sure is. Good to see you.
Well, I don't know if you
I'll
noticed,
tell Mom,
Mark, but
y'all said hello.
I will. You do the same. Do the same.
now let me bring in one more, Guru. Adjust your camera there, Mr. DeShay. We got 3 attorneys, Richard. So, Richard, you have the opportunity to get some of your serious questions answered. Mr. Bob DeShay, Attorney DeShay, good evening. You got to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark, how you doing, man?
Bob DeShay, my hero. Well, Doni, you put together quite the panel here. You know, in other times they would call this a conspiracy, but we're free enough now that we can talk openly, Bob. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you too, my brother.
Yeah.
It looked like that same group that got together and stole that election from Trump. I'm gonna tell you the truth. Look like the same damn group.
Need to make sure it's reconstituted.
Oh boy, what a day! What a day! What a day! I
How you
just
doing,
told
Robert? I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, Edsel Brown from Southern Maryland.
Yeah. So we cross paths all the time on Instagram, Facebook, one of them places. Yeah, I just got off the phone with my brother in North Carolina. Things are so bad in Baltimore, Mark. I told him I was gonna move North Carolina, put it here, and sit it down on top of Baltimore, and let it just rise. I can't hardly take it anymore.
So, Mr. Bob, let me get straight to the jugular. Who do you like for governor and why?
I like Wes Moore because as of the moment, he has committed to at least allow me to recommend the people that I think should fill the high level and the mid-level positions in the various state departments. Because that's where we're getting killed as black folk. We can always apply some sort of pressure at the top because they're visible, and the more visible they are, the more accountable they, at least theoretically, are. But it's the people at the mid-level that are killing us every day. That'll tell a woman who's been a professional senior hairstylist for over 35 years, that wants to start her own school for young black girls, who owns the building, owns the equipment, has her capital, has the money, has the bonding, but they don't like the questions that she would ask potential candidates, so they turn her down for a license to operate a school. That's the mid-level. Or the other client who's operated a daycare center for 20 years, unblemished, not a violation, not even a hint of it. They walk in and all of a sudden we got to suspend your license, emergency, we got to shut you down. And then when we appeal that, guess what? We're gonna revoke your license now. That's what's happening at the ground that people don't see. They're killing us every day. Or like Hope filed an application for a certificate of need for a 16-bed psychiatric hospital for our kids who are being shipped all across the country, and Shepard Pratt comes in with a 100-page opposition to it. Claiming that a 16-bed hospital would put them out of business.
Chime on in for me, Mark Spencer.
Well, I think Bob makes a great point. Honestly, I'm impressed with Wes Moore. I don't know him. My son has done a good job of giving me excerpts from his books. Never met him, never seen him, at least have a real presence here in Prince George's County. I do have some background with the now outgoing comptroller. I've known him since he was a councilman in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which is down in our end of Montgomery County. And so I think he's a guy that I at least have some trust in. But I will say, and the other thing I'll say about Peter Francho, and Francho and Moore are the only people I think are serious people who, are talking about going to the next level. But the point that Bob makes is so important and profound. And again, I want to go back to, I had to tell myself and repeatedly that historically, this really is an unprecedented time. When I thought about this conversation, in my lifetime now as an adult, we have African Americans seriously contending for the most important positions in the political body of this state. And that's unlike a lot of states, most states even. So, even places like Georgia. And today, if you haven't seen it in the Washington Post, there's a story about voting rights issue in terms of congressional redistricting in Montgomery, Alabama. And so having a Black woman as Speaker of the House, having African-American candidates, the leading contenders, in my mind, to be governor, at least on the Democrat side. African-Americans running for comptroller. I mean, these were things that in my early adulthood just did not exist. And so I'm heartened by that. I'm heartened by the fact that a white candidate for governor has seen fit to announce that he has a Black agenda, kind of echoing the Speaker of the House. And so all those things, at least in my mind, I'm hoping signal real progress in terms of us being in the room and being heard and pushing an agenda that's important, not just to Black folks, but when we push our agenda, it's about pushing the agenda for ordinary people, ordinary working people and poor people. But also say, Bob makes a great point. It doesn't make any difference if it doesn't impact people where they're living, where they're working, their businesses, and that's how we grow wealth and opportunity. And that's my standard of measure for all of these people running for all offices.
Edsel, what was the theme at your forum there in Southern Maryland for the gubernatorial forum? What was being said?
Well, the essential theme, it's almost obvious by the fact that it was a business-oriented forum. It wasn't a debate, it was a forum. So we couched all the questions around basically business development. What are they going to do to help with minority business and wealth creation and bridging the gap between the problems that we have now between majority and minority communities? What are you going to do to bridge the gap? Besides just the generic statements that most politicians make, what are you going to do to deliver the goods? Everybody talks a good game at this stage of the game, but why are you going to be different? Why is your plan going to deliver the goods where others haven't, or others have made promises and didn't deliver?
Now, Mr. Bob, I got to come back to you because you, while in Baltimore, you have roots there on the Eastern Shore. What are people in your hometown looking for in a governor?
I haven't asked anybody. That's the honest question. Since my mother moved from Salisbury a few years before she died, which was in 2020, the only relatives I have there still are cousins and that I barely know. I have one or two clients that they're not particularly active, but I would suppose, Donnie, that they were looking for the same thing as the people in Baltimore are looking for. The fact is that, we have to realize something. There is only one asset from which wealth can be generated, and that's land. All this other stuff is fictional. The money handlers, all of the financial services industry, that's all fiction. The only real asset is the one that man can't destroy or create, and that's land. So until we, and I learned that from a client actually, the man who talks about getting a piece of the bricks. Until we structure a program that's added, and that's why in 1862 they gave those settlers 160 acres apiece. Started off with 320. They were too big for them. We've got to get, the federal government owns land in every state in the union. If we want to get a piece of the rock, we got to get a piece of that land. And we got to teach our children, that what happened, the country is like a company. The citizens are shareholders. We became shareholders when our feet hit the ground. notwithstanding the fact that the management, i.e. the elected officials, denied us the full opportunity to exercise all the rights and privileges of citizenship. That didn't destroy the fact destroy the fact that we were citizens, and we achieved it in the same way. We put our feet on the ground. So we got to teach our children that. We got to teach our children that America, not white people, but America owes black people a debt. The same way they owe interest and principal on the general obligation bonds. Because they allowed management to deny us the citizenship that we were entitled to the day we put foot in St. Augustine, Florida, or Jamestown, Virginia. Whichever one you want to pick. When our feet hit the ground, we were citizens.
So you three lawyers, I'm going to step back for a minute and let the young Richard DeShay Elliott drive this part of the conversation, because it's important, for one, that he knows you three. I don't think he knows you, but he will soon learn. And then also, he has his own pick for governor. And while I have my picks, I'm going to fall back and see how this goes. So there you go, Richard DeShay Elliott. Show him what you got.
Sure. So I'm supporting Peter Franchot, Monique Anderson Walker for governor. I have a few reasons. Where's that booklet? Well, one of the reasons, oh, here it is they actually penned a black agenda. And in the agenda, there's things like economic inclusion, increasing the minority business enterprises by 50%, increasing capital, greenlining rather than redlining, making sure that business loans and home loans are available rather than people having to pay more money, education, infrastructure, building new schools. This agenda is he's the only candidate who actually made one. I find that rather important because Rashawn Baker, who I find rather unacceptable as a candidate, he had the quote of, "You all are the black agenda. Not only do we need to ask for stuff, but we also have to be lobbyists when he's the governor, rather than expecting our management, as Esquire Dashiell put it, rather than the management executing leadership on our behalf with clear, obvious directions from us." There's other things beyond just the black agenda, but that's a primary part of it. In my opinion, especially with me being a candidate, I need somebody that when they win has demonstrated competence in how they actually administer government. Franchot's office, if you ever call the chief of staff, he'll answer within 45 seconds. I had somebody call just last week informing his office that prison guards were stealing money that was being sent to somebody that was in jail. Not just that they follow up with that jail, but they had to ask, is this a systemic issue? Do we need to assess the monetary value of money that gets sent into the jail versus what the prisoners are getting? So that is the kind of turning my complaints into system-wide addressals that I don't have to ask for. They just naturally do it. So that's among my pitches for Peter Franchot. 16 years gives you quite a bit of statewide name recognition. Monique Anderson Walker has been an outstanding Prince George's County Council member. Their campaign has been focused on actually reaching out to voters and talking about issues, not on charisma, not necessarily on local bosses making the pitch. And then finally, I'm but a mere 26-year-old that Mr. Spencer remembers back when I was just a big-headed kid talking in the back of the classroom. This is the front runner for governor that is taking my advice on which candidates to support in Prince George's County. In the black community, the Franchot campaign is supporting reformers almost exclusively. That matters quite a bit for me for when he's in government, knowing that the people who I'm going in there with, he's also going to be people that he's listening to. With some of the other governor candidates, they have shown either a lack of concern for the down ballot impact or even going specifically against the reformers. If I'm going to be in the legislature working with individuals like the Black Caucus chairman, Darrell Barnes, who recently endorsed Peter Franchot, working with some of the women who are trying to get reelected in some of the more red areas of the state, like your Michelle Guytons, Michelle Guytons and your Heather Bagnows, also going with Franchot. It makes it very obvious that it builds a coalition where he does not dominate, but rather issues dominate. And that has been an issue coalition that even me just going to Annapolis on a day I went there to testify in favor of a bill allowing expanded history curriculum, not just for Black folks, but Latinos, Asians, women, etc. the same day Francho was the only governor candidate offering testimony saying that in special education classrooms there should be cameras. So that courage on issues is essential for whoever I'm a support as governor, and I have full confidence in Peter Francho, Monique Anderson Walker, but I'm going to shut up so I can hear y'all three opinions because you all are more educated than I.
Let me respond, if I may, first. I've known Francho for many, many years. He's been running for governor for at least 20 years. So his candidacy comes as no surprise and really nothing new. I've not had the positive experience that you recount, and I'm not persuaded by words that people put in a brochure and call it a black agenda. I've been looking at black agendas for over 50 years, and ain't nothing changed but from the agenda. I reserve the right to decide who's black. The fact that you're the same color as me don't mean that you have the same heart as me. With respect to one of the things that I noticed is that, and I don't know whether it's true or not, the paper reported that his selection of the lieutenant governor was had outstanding tax obligations to the state of Maryland. I don't know whether that's true or not.
It is true. It is true, and I don't mind it.
Hold on, young blood. Just hold on a second. You got to hold. But he should have known, and he should have cleared that up before he announced her as a candidate. What that tells me is he didn't care as long as it was a woman that was black. Period. I'm just watching him over the years. He didn't care that David Blumberg has been chairman of the parole commission almost since it was created, and he decides who gets out of jail. He didn't care that this company that has exclusive rights to put ankle bracelets on, which most black folks wear, that this white company that no black company has ever owned or even had the opportunity to bid for that contract. So I'm talking about stuff that gets down into the weeds and drill down to where the rubber meets the road. Anybody can espouse platitudes. Anybody talks well at the time of election. But I'm looking at yeah, and you're right. His office is very responsive. They'll give you an answer. But then when he votes as a member of the Board of Public Works, sometimes the votes goes a little different from what he said when he talked to you on the phone. That's been my experience over the last 20 years. Not yours, but that's mine. So do I trust him? The answer is no. Now, do I trust anybody I don't see? The answer is also no, right? So maybe if I had a relationship with Francho, now also one of my best clients and best friends is his Baltimore campaign manager, at least honorary, Dr. Al Hathaway, has been pushing it. So I'm not going to lose no matter what. Because you see what I'm saying? And I'm not going to lose. I don't care. Frankly, I don't care. The person who occupies the position of governor is ultimately not the most important position in the state. The people who run this government are the people that are important to me. So, I appreciate the fact that he's concerned with the down ballot candidates, and as he should be. But since I don't know those people, I can't comment upon it.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in, Richard. And what you just heard was Bob giving you the advantage of longer history. These are things that, as a practicing attorney, as someone who's been deeply politically involved in the state, and he's been a resource for me on an issue I'm deeply involved and concerned with, and that is building the financial wealth from Black people owning businesses, hiring people, and being able to build institutional wealth and generational wealth. And so I'll say it in a different way. You have the advantage and the energy of youth, and we appreciate that. But we've been around a little longer and longer of tooth, and we know that there's a big difference between what people say and what happens when the competing interests in Annapolis and the county councils really have to deal with these issues. And I want to go to that point. And that is, as Bob well knows, I'll invoke a common friend of ours, a guy named Hank Arrington, who recently passed on January the 8th. And Hank, along with a small cabal of Black legislators back in the 70s, were responsible for helping to construct the first Minority Business Enterprise Program legislation that we had in the state. And yet, decades later, in every county of this state and at the state level, the absence of meaningful Black, brown, and other minority participation at the county and state level. And that's, make no mistake, much of the wealth of this country is built on government opportunity and contracting. And also, as Bob has pointed out, for example, I'll talk about Prince George's County. In Prince George's County, I defy you to identify 5 significant land use development projects where Black folks are the money people, are the head of it, and are going to be able to build generational wealth from developing a project. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. And this is, I think, I'll speak for myself and not for Bob, but this is the real problematic thing. When we talk about in our county, Prince George's, when the lion's share of school contracting for procurement, for construction, for professional services go to white firms, most of whom aren't even headquartered in the county. When we talk about instructional services in the schools, when we talk about things like roadway paving, and I could go on and on. These are the things that where a company comes in, they hire someone to be an electrician, to be an HVAC technician, to drive a truck, to be able to be an independent contractor who has a couple of dump trucks and get that significant contract to haul trash or do paving. That's where we build communal wealth and we empower people. And that's particularly at the county level where things have really gone awry. And I'll just tell you this, we can talk about Peter Franchot, for example, but the fact is that during his tenure as comptroller, this really hasn't impacted what's happening on the economic front at the county level. So for example, in Prince George's County, we have for many years had a 20% minority participation goal in public contracting. We've never reached that. And we're talking about professional services. I mean, we've done disparity studies that show significant underutilization of minority businesses in every aspect of government contracting. That's where people make money. That's where they build wealth. They go out and they hire people, right? And those people can pay for families, buy homes, pay taxes, buy goods and services. And so I will just echo what Bob said. In my life experience here in Maryland, the president of the Senate was always the most powerful person in the state and could direct economic opportunity in the way that he felt was most beneficial to his power base. That's changed, but not really. And so this election, in my mind, for me, is not about so much who stands, as the titular head of state government, but really, is there a person or a team that really is going to be empowering for, I'm just saying it, for Black folks to improve their opportunity to have a decent living, make a decent wage. For example, we got a guy now who's the treasurer. This guy was opposed to instituting a minimum wage over a 5-year period that would bring us in the mid-level of states. And so this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And so that's my concern, and particularly what happens in that interaction between state government and local government and where the monies flow. And so anybody who is involved in this political process, I'm not, as Paul said, I could care less what suit and what dress you have on and where you worship. I want to know how you're creating opportunity and what you plan to do to make that a reality.
Okay. For that, I really appreciate that question because that kind of gets at the heart of why I'm supporting Franchot. Say again, the interaction between state government and local government. I already reiterated, I think Baker is an unacceptable candidate for a variety of reasons, going back to minority participation. With MGM, which Baker has claimed as his biggest achievement, MGM had almost no minority inclusion. And now they are taking resources from other parts of the county, ironically, to build up that area of the county. I love it. MGM's nice, but there has been almost no long-term building for it. On that front, what we're talking about here basically is who is funding, who is serving these individual governor candidates. And on that front, I am fully transparent in my support for Peter and opposition to several other candidates because of one particular reason: developers. The local developers that have been giving us hell and giving us houses without proper resources since I've been an infant. Those developers do not support Peter Franchot. They support Rashawn Baker, who they've given free sign locations to, even though he legally can't accept developer money. And they are now in the Baltimore metropolitan area going out to support Wes Moore. So I'm with you all strongly on that. Let's even get away from the issues and more onto how is this going to serve as a money machine of extraction or money development for the Black community, and look at who is funding and supporting those governor candidates. The candidate who I was asked to speak about at the beginning and the memo, Wes Moore. Wes Moore is being supported by these same entities. The Baltimore County Executive, Jim Smith, who was recently found to have illegally given large numbers of, or not recently, this was several years ago, gave large amounts of illegal donations. Caves Valley, a large-scale developer out in Baltimore County. The same economic interests that we are talking about that have either strangled or poorly invested. I have gone with a governor candidate that has not gotten in bed with them. And as I said to the most notorious lobbyist in the state, Bruce Bariano, you know just as well as I do, when the corrupt forces in this state get you, they will not let go and they'll throw you in the trash. Bruce knows that. Bruce stays away from him now since they got him sent to jail. Now me and Bruce support the same candidate for governor because we want to stay away from those corrupt elements. So
Well,
on the money,
say, Richard, let me warn you. I wouldn't invoke Bruce Bariano's name too much in this state if I were you, particularly when we're talking to Black folks. Just as a warning.
Absolutely. I helped stop Bruce's son from becoming a judge. Me and Bruce disagree on everything except for the fact that you don't want to be with corrupt people supporting the same candidate for governor. That's exactly why I wanted to make the point about Bruce.
Okay.
Edsel, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Edsel, you haven't had a chance to chime in. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've been listening intently to the comments everybody's made, and they're excellent comments. I'm learning a lot today myself. But I tend to agree with what some of the other speakers have said in terms of, at the end of the day, it almost doesn't make any difference who gets in there. It's the framework that they put in place to deliver on the promises that they make. And again, speaking from the vantage point of business, especially since I'm with the minority chamber, is, what are they going to do other than the rhetoric that's being put out there? One of the things that we really focused on at the debate with the gubernatorial candidates is we have this the goal for minority MBE participation, and it falls woefully short every year. So, and everybody makes the same promises. We're gonna change this, we're gonna change that, but nothing really changes. So one of the things that has to happen, regardless of who gets in there, is accountability. What mechanisms are going to be put in place for accountability? Whether you put it in the performance metrics for some of the people that are making these decisions at the lower levels, or other approaches to do it, but there has to be something put in place other than the status quo. Now, in terms of who gets in there, one thing I noticed that Richard was underscoring was Franchot's Black Agenda. Well, if you go to their several of the candidates' websites, they have Black agendas. They have focuses that they're going to take for minority populations. That seems to be the hot thing this year. That we're going to really help you guys out. So vote for me. Plus, don't forget that I have a Black running mate with me too. So vote for me. Don't pay attention to what I'm saying. Just take a look at my photo op. So again, to make a long story short, I think it makes less difference who gets in there. It's more a matter of holding whoever gets in there accountable. But I will say this, Francho was my second pick, and Wes Moore is my first pick, at least right now. And the reason why he's my first pick is I like the fact that he's a semi-outsider. So he hasn't been in office for a number of years. So, you know, he he has to be bought off once he gets in there. I know you're saying that he's got, you know, support, you know, questionable support, but at least he, you know, he doesn't have the ties that he would have if he was in there for 12 or 13 years. So he at least has an opportunity to hit the ground running before he gets tainted.
I'm not going to insult your number one choice at all, but I will say that for an outsider, he's got the support of the speaker, the support of most of the committee chairs, the support of the Prince George's County executive, the support of the Prince George's County state's attorney, the support of the Anne Arundel County executive. Who am I forgetting? Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of outsider support, but how outsider, how progressive, how a lot of things are defined in this election, as I think even Doni would agree, is extremely odd to do. I make a case for Francho as actually the most independent, probably most Black-friendly, from Black-friendly being for low-level political leadership, and the most honest for minority business inclusion because you have a record. However, Mr. Dashiell, or excuse me, Esquire Dashiell, has the exact opposite case. And I think that we're not arguing far off from each other. So as this campaign comes along, as there are more pledges to compare, as there's more debates where there's not 11 people on a stage, but it's like 3, I think it's going to bring a lot more distinctions that right now are not very clear. And I do want to apologize. There are other people who brought forward the Black agenda or a minority agenda. When the Black Caucus chairman, Darrell Barnes, requested one and held a debate, Peter was the only one that had one at that time, only one that presented it. Rashern had the awful comment of, quote, y'all, referring to the Black populace are the Black agenda. And Wes mostly had stories about his life that were not really about governing. Now, that said, forums are not where you actually execute the pros of governing. So I think that's a very rude example to use. And when there are debates, especially if there ever is one among Peter, Wes, Rashern, and Tom, I think that's where the distinctions are actually going to come up. You can't order dinner with 10 people. You definitely can't debate the future of a state with 10 people on a stage.
I have a quick question, if I may. I know basically we've talked about a couple of candidates. I'm just wondering if, you know, any of our other panelists think any of the other candidates are worth considering.
Well, so I'll just be honest and say that, I'm going back and thinking about Bob's comments, and they just strike so close to home with my thinking. It's important to me that, you know, Bob Dashiell says that there's a candidate that he has influence with, that he can talk to about putting the right people in the right places. And I mean, so for me, you know, who's going to be leading the education department? Who's running MDOT? Who are going to be the decision makers on the parole commission? I mean, you know, down to this level. And are these people who have a sense of connection and sensitivity, awareness of what our community needs are and what our aspirations are? And that's so important. Now, you've given an example, you know, years ago, you know, on the minority business side, when the Republican Bob Ehrlich ascended to the governor's chair, I know for a fact that at least on the state level, Black entrepreneurs did significantly better than under a Democratic regime. And I always found that disturbing, particularly with the fact that the Democrat Party dominated the General Assembly. And then, you know, we've recently had some phenomena like these public-private partnerships that almost exclusively operate on the public dollar without any accountability, but there are no African Americans in leadership positions or strong entrepreneurial positions within these things that are huge taxpayer giveaways. And again, it goes down to what's happening on the ground. Who's making these decisions and how is this stuff happening? So when we talk about letting contracts for goods and services, for school boards and housing departments, for public safety, all of those things really matter. And again, my view from experience and in a contemporary sense is that our community is woefully underrepresented despite the campaign rhetoric and the promises that we hear, particularly on the Democrat Party side. And I find that very concerning.
Well, I don't want this to go too far. Wanted to give everybody, Richard, you've had a chance to meet legends. You have been grilled by legends. But I got to tell you, you keep mentioning this black agenda, and I wasn't going to say anything. But Joe Gaskins from Prince George's County said he wrote Francho's Black Agenda, and then he dipped off and went to support West. So,
hey, me and Joe are cool, and I've outright told Joe our disagreement on candidate ain't anything personal. And I will end with, while Rashern has the negative comment of y'all are the Black Agenda, my final promise is this. I know how to write bills. I've already written a procurement rewriting bill that would have, rather than just you could waive things out, it would add a mileage component. It would add a local hiring component on a kind of point system. And the more points you have, if something's local, something's black owned, if something's a small business, making it easier for y'all to get contracts.
Also, Rich, we need people who will enforce the rules that are already on the book.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I don't disagree with you at all. Between the Board of Elections, the Parole Commission, we have a lot of entities in this state where there are fine and lovely people managing the bottom aspects of it, whereas at the top, there's no accountability or even threat of being repositioned, and in the middle, there's only the threat of being fired for going against orders. So whether it comes to the Parole Commission, MDOT, for many of these entities, trust that I will regard, and especially for Judge, there's going to be a whole bunch of District 24, Richard Elliott recommendations going to the governor and comptroller's office saying why we need to get people, not just because I love them, but because their impact in office will produce gains for our community that have positive economic impact in the state.
Richard, let me add a couple of things. Number one, you may not know, but I've heard a couple of comments about Prince George's County not meeting the so-called minority goal, and I'll talk about the concept of minority. But the fact of the matter is, the greatest percentage of state contracts that have been recognized under this minority program have gone to white women, not blacks. Okay, you need to understand that. And that's because we try to kill the snake by cutting off the tail instead of the head. You don't kill a snake by cutting off the tail. Yeah, we went after racism when the issue all along was white supremacy.
Yes. Mr. Bob, right there, I need you to tell him whose country this is.
This is my country, and it's your country, and it's the rest of the country. So when I tell the people, when I go to the Maryland Club, that they finally convinced me, which is an old blue blood white male institution, probably one of the oldest, and they asked me, I'm the poster child now for trying to get black folks in, okay? So when they call me to a luncheon and all around the table was all these white folks, I said, look, I'm gonna say something and y'all gonna be mad and I'm gonna make you shame that you're mad. And they said, what is it? I said, America owes black people a debt. And I look around the table and said, all of y'all turn red face. Why? I didn't say white people owe the debt. I said America own white. You're mad because you think you own America.
Exactly.
That's why you're mad.
Right.
We got to teach our kids. We got to teach our children, Richard, that we became citizens the same way they did when our feet hit the ground.
Yes.
When our feet hit the ground. Richard, and also, Richard, you got to show. I don't know who did you go to talk about writing your procurement bill.
So I wrote that while
No. I said, who did you talk to consult about what to put in the bill?
The Farms to Schools Network and procurement agencies in
You didn't come to the oldest black lawyer in the state handling procurement. I never heard of you before. Why?
Hey,
Because no, stop it. Why? Because you didn't think that black folk had the knowledge and experience to help you do what you're doing. You don't know that this year we put in House Bill 1353 that substantially rewrote the Maryland Procurement Code.
Yes.
And let me tell you something. When you change the structure, you help everybody. You try to create a procurement system to fit blacks in when you continue to incorporate the fundamental component that keeps other people out, low bid.
Right.
The low bid system is the antithesis of breaking the system up for other people.
Absolutely.
You didn't change the low bid in your bill because you don't understand. You're very intelligent, and trust me, I love you. I don't even know you, but I love you. And I wouldn't be talking to you this way if I didn't.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, discipline is a function of love. And I'm disciplining you now because I love you. And if you're going to learn something, you got to get in line behind some people who've been here a while.
Yeah.
The world didn't start when you were born.
Yeah. And Richard, I want to say, before you run further down the road, this man that just talked to you, Robert Dashiell, is someone you should have a couple of sit downs with and just soak it in. And you'll hear things that are from experience and that you didn't know, but that you should know. And that's all I'll say on that. And Bob, I've known this young man for a long time. He's very smart. He's a good kid. He's raised well, but he's young. And as we all experience when we're young, we think we know more than we do, but wisdom comes with age and experience also.
But also, Richard, you are our future. And if we don't pour into you now, we won't get the chance because they will steal you from us.
Yep.
He is our future.
People try all the time. Trust me.
And Bob, I want to be touching base with you myself.
What we got to do, Richard, is we defer to somebody else to construct a system in which candidates get picked and selected, and then we try to pick somebody the lesser of two or three evils, and then wait till they get there and try to make it what they should have been at the time they were first put there.
Absolutely.
And that don't work.
That
don't work. We got to start raising them even before they get to be your age. We got to start raising them before they. But you got a good start. You got a solid foundation. Trust me, I love talking to young people, especially when they're smart and they're willing to learn and they're willing to read and they're willing to understand. And you got all those ingredients. And I'll spend whatever amount of time. I don't have all the answers. Don't get me wrong. I don't know everything. I don't purport to know it. But I've been around a minute.
Well, Richard's our future.
You're the one who I'm entrusting with my grandkids' future because I won't be here.
Right.
So I got to get you straight so that you can keep them straight.
That's right.
Understood. And after this, I'm gonna ask Donnie to send me your information.
All of these guys. Mark, Edsel. There's a bunch that we don't just because look. Brown v. Board of Education was the absolute worst decision the Supreme Court has ever made for black people. Because it established as a matter of law that any institution that's predominantly black is necessarily inferior. They didn't have to bus us to the white school because we didn't have books. Give me the books. They didn't have to bus us to the white school because we didn't have blackboards. Give me the blackboards. But what did it do? Every time you turn around, we have to deny something that's ours in order to get something supposedly they already own. I was riding with some guys in the car the other morning and said, people of color, don't call me that. I'm black. You're white, right? God did not fall asleep and leave us in the oven too long. And he's not colorblind. We're different by design and intention. And I'm through.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've joined us for a powerful night of news and information. And this is beautiful. This is at least 3 generations of black men discussing the most important thing about to happen, whether it's July or whenever it should be. But I'm glad, Richard, you had a chance to meet Edsel in Southern Maryland, Mark Spencer, then Prince George's, Mr. Bob Dashiell, originally from the Eastern Shore. We claim him here in the city of Baltimore. And you, of course, Richard DeShay, we are proud of you. You get the final word, young Richard.
So thank you. If you can't grill me, I don't respect you. So Esquire Dashiell, I really appreciate that. Donnie, I got your number on my phone at last, so we will talk again. I'm gonna ask you to send me all these people's contact information. And Mr. Spencer, it's good to see you. I'm wishing you a very, very good day, and I hope that you see me again very soon in person. Donnie reunited me with somebody I went to. That's from, 20 years ago. That really means a lot to me.
Welcome to the family. My name's Donnie Glover, and we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the Donnie Glover Show. Have a beautiful day. Good night, everyone.
See you, my friends.